I have just noticed that this one CSV file is in our Pluto data directory. Doesn't really make sense to have this in the repository. It kind of does because this data is something that our application might use more than once, but it's also a very big file, and it's something that, well, I guess one reason why it makes sense to have it in the repository is so that we could move it around to the different places where we deploy the app, and then we could use it to ingest into that database at that point. But since these files are like dozens of megabytes in size, I don't think it makes sense to move them around with our repository. So I'm going to remove it from the repository. I do want to keep the file in this directory locally though. What I have done is updated the git ignore file to say that all of the CSV files in this directory will not be placed into the repository and changes to them will not be tracked. But since there's already one in there, what I can do is git rm, and since I don't want to actually delete the file locally, I'm going to do -- cached. And then we're going to say doc Pluto and then bx.csv. And so now Git has registered that we made a change, but the file was not actually deleted.
Can you explain to me the slashes, the organization of the slashes?
So to have a space in the name of the directory, I have to escape it with a backslash. Yeah, might have been smarter to not put a space in this directory name, but it's all good. Now we learned how to do it.
Gotcha.
Okay, so the other thing that I did off camera was just put this URL into a file just so I don't have to look it up later. We can use this API to sanitize mailing addresses. And we learned that this API is not allowed to be used for bulk processing. It can only be used for transactional processing. So the plan is to do the bulk sanitization kind of by ourselves, and then when the user puts in a search query, we will sanitize it before comparing it to our data, and hopefully that will enable us to basically match up, as many of the queries as we can. So this commit, I'm gonna ignore this for now and just say CSV files are not stored in repository. Okay. So when we pass the user query into the postal API, the sanitized addresses that it's going to give us are ordinalized. So it basically, instead of 7th Street, it'll say 7th TH Street. And that is also how most of the users will type their search in the first place. So what we have to do in order to prepare our data for those kind of queries is take this Pluto data, or GeoClient data rather, and ordinalize it. And that I think we can do relatively easily with some Ruby. So let's see GeoClient. So when we are naming the street, we can go through there and ordinalize all the numbers that we find. Let's go into our console and see how that's going to work. That did not work. Okay, so the reason it didn't work was because it was a string. That's how that's going to go. Convert the string to an integer, then convert the integer back to a string. And the interesting thing about converting a string to an integer is that if we have a string like this, that's what it gets converted to. It cuts all the non-number letters right out. So that will allow us to shortcut one part of the process, but then when we're saving the name of the street, we still have to save the second part of it, because otherwise we won't know if it's 55th Street or 55th Ave. So
you have a delimiter as a space, and then the string, you concatenate the string in the end.
yeah, so we can split it out. So we can say, okay, so here's our street name. So if we say sname.split, we can split it on the space. And actually, sname is a little bit more like this. But that still works. So we then...
Where's the space? Where did the space go?
the spaces are gone.
Split will take out the spaces?
Yeah. I mean, we can split on anything we want, but if we don't tell it what to split on, it will split on space.
Okay. That's good. That's really good.
And then...
But you might have more than one space.
Right, but that works. See, that's why I just...
Van Dam.
That's why I just tested. Ah, yeah. Right, Van Dam. Although Van Dam Street is actually just one word. But there are streets that have multiple words. So, okay. So if the street word can be turned into a number, then it will be ordinalized. How does that sound for logic?
Street name into a number?
The street word. So
Street word.
let's say like long street name equals Van Sicklin Avenue. LSN.split, so that's... And none of the numeric streets are going to have... Oh, well, there's Little West 12. Is that a street name or an alternate street name, you think?
That was from Dixon, right? Did you call Carol? Good, good. You didn't call?
Okay. I think what we should do is deal with the preponderance of cases where this is our format, although they have, east and west, but since Manhattan is our primary concern, we need to do a good job with the numbered streets. So let's come up with a method that turns them into the postal format. So let's say postal format of this. Maybe I should actually put that method in here. Even though this sanitizer, its job is to contact USPS, but maybe it should do both. Yeah, why not? What did I call it? Postal format. Let's say postal format street name. Okay, so street words equals street name dot split. And we'll give ourselves just a little hint here, which is like East 55 Street goes to East 55th Street. So street words dot map to word, I guess, and then let's see what this does. Street dot to I, so that goes to 0. Okay, so word dot to I equals 0, and if it does, then we'll just keep the word. If it doesn't, then we'll say word to I dot ordinalize. And okay. We also are going to do, I guess we'll map it again. We'll do direction. If, or case word, when east E, when west W, else word.
Well, you need to do south.
You need to do south?
North.
Yeah, okay. When south S, when north N. And then that one, type, I guess. I don't really like using the word type because it's too ambiguous. What's like the difference between street, avenue, road, drive, boulevard? Is that like just a type is an obvious choice. Let's see. Road type, avenue type, road type, road type.
Yeah, I would say road type.
Pike?
Parkway. Lane. Court. Circle.
How is circle abbreviated?
CIR. Alley.
There's abbreviation for that.
AL. BLVD. Can you have commas? Can you have more than one variable? I mean, more than one.
Yeah, you can. For the input, not for the output. Is that Pike? Do you know? What about Parkway?
PKWY.
Okay, and we can always fix this, update it later.
Yeah, of course.
In fact, this might, well, it might be good to store this translation table in a hash. Although, I'm not sure how we would make it so that the hash would default to kind of passing through the data. Whereas this is, it's easy to do that with a case statement.
What do you, when you say end map, what does that mean?
So this block is an anonymous method. Okay, it won't let me select. I'm trying to select. Okay, so everything from do to end is a block.
Right.
The block is an anonymous method. The method gets passed into this method. This method calls this one in a loop. So what we're doing is basically, instead of giving a method arguments like this, we're giving it an argument which is another method. And what this one does, takes every element in this collection, runs this method on it. Give it the temporary nickname word, and then it runs this code using that object. When it's done, it passes back a collection with the results of this method in the same order that the objects in this collection were initially. So then, at this point, I can call map on that collection. So it would be similar to saying like,
You don't need to say streetwords.map?
I could say like bb equals, or lowercase bb equals this, and then I could say bb.map. It's the return value of this. It's just coming out of the end of the block. So this is just a three-step process of standardization. First, I replace the number with this, then I replace this with this, then I replace this with this. So I think that's pretty good. Another question is what to do with capital lowercase letters, but I think that leaving all this data in capitalized letters is going to be okay. I mean,
you know, Carol's not in the office. You want me to call her?
That's all right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. How you doing?
Cool. I just sent that email.
Okay, to Alan?
I don't know.
Yeah.
be doing the other one. The one for Times Square. Basically, I just have to get. I think I'm gonna take the CAD drawing and I will import it to Revit, and that's all.
I think it's better in Revit, we can see 3D. You can give them the final 3D. Well,
You don't have it on 3D.
no, I don't have 3D.
Everything's 2D. No. But well, I'm gonna need some information, like the name of the company, the client's information, all that bullshit.
I'll give it to you.
That's all.
Okay, so I'm going to see if that code is going to work at all. What I'm going to do is look at my streets list and go right to the end. My web server is pretty unresponsive right now. Okay, what is it?
It's my data. I mean, I think it's my data connection. What do you think? Internet?
Well, yeah, your internet connection is not great, but this server is not actually touching the internet. Okay, so we are on the last places. Okay. So we're on the last page of streets here. So if I reload this, are there any new ones coming in? No. You know what we should do is make an interface for streets here, so I can see kind of what the status of that ingestion process is. Okay, so, undefined local variable or method word on line 8. Oh, yep. Good stuff. Oh, and what's interesting is that since this is doing a find or create, it's going to be looking for a name which is sanitized, but the names we've already saved are not sanitized, so it's going to create something new. So the data that we now have in this database is starting to get out of sync with itself, which is okay because we have all our data ready to just start from scratch again. Okay, so what happened was we ended up with an array. So check this out, March. What we have is an array that needs to be joined with strings.
Or need to come back to the string.
Yeah. Needs to be joined with spaces, is what I meant.
Right, spaces.
So let's try that again. Okay, so the TH is not capitalized here. I don't know if it matters.
But that's data that we put in there, right?
Yeah, that is data that we put in there. We could go ahead and capitalize it before saving it, just so that everything is kind of more standardized. But when we search, we're going to want to do a case insensitive search anyway. I guess upcase is fine. Ordinalize.upcase.
Great. Ruby will do that?
Yep.
Wow. you know,
Mm-hmm.
PHP or whatever, had to replace, string replace, and stuff. And then we added math with math involved.
Okay, so we're not getting too many new hits on the streets here because I guess I wonder how much data we have that's not qualified here. Okay, we have a lot. Wow, so we have 860,000 lots, huh?
Yeah, that's about right. Yeah, about,
So,
yeah, about 900,000. Yeah.
wow. So our ingester worked incredibly well, but the next step has only gotten through a few thousand records. And
Well, I
yet,
didn't do it all. I mean,
yeah, so when you ran it to the tune of 50,000,
No.
there was this reset,
yeah.
which may be a result of our sort of batch of data, or
Yeah.
it may not.
I don't think I was doing it.
Um, okay, so that street name sanitization seems to be working pretty well so far. Or, yeah, it was working at least a little bit. And then what we want to do is sanitize the query coming in from, well, I guess I'm ready to go ahead and commit this work. Don't need to commit that. Cool.
Very cool.
So street names are converted to postal format before being saved. Before, during ingest, I guess. Emphasis on numbered streets and common street types, street abbreviations. Okay. So in accessing this USPS API, I don't think that we need to write instance methods. I think a class method will work fine here. So I guess I'll write standardize instead of sanitize because it's more, I think, a more accurate description of what we're doing. Standardize user entered address. So I think what we have to do now is create a XML like this. City state lookup response. Nope, that's not what we're doing. There's the zip code. Address standardization. Step 1, page 4. address validate request with our user ID, include optional elements, delivery point and other optional elements. So this is for really mailing stuff to people, which is not what we're doing. So I think we can actually leave that tag out. Return carrier route, also going to leave that out. So the address, which apparently carries an ID, up to 5 address verifications can be included per transaction. So it looks like this ID is just something that we get to use however we want. It doesn't really say whether it's even required, but it might be. Then there's firm name, corporation, address 1, address 2. Okay, so for them, they use address 2 for the street address, which is not what I'm used to in the typical structure. Okay, either city and state or zip5 are required. That it presents us a small problem.
It does, because
We don't have zip data yet, but city and state should be doable for us since we're only doing New York.
we get the zip problem to lack,
So we don't also care about apartment or suite numbers. So we're just going to use address 2, city, and state. Okay. So what we have to do is basically just put this. This is the only one that we're doing from the user content.
Is that kind of like a global variable?
Yes, it is. then we'll just put the user's street address right in here. Okay, I don't see my USPS thing here, so I'm gonna start that up again. USPS address sanitizer key and ID. Okay, so that's what I called it. Address sanitizer. Make the internet connection. Okay.
You want to pause the video for just a minute?
Sure.